Captain Kira Voss stood on the bridge of her dying ship. Round her sparks flew from broken control panels. The lights flickered on and off. Her crew worked hard to keep the ship running, but she knew they were losing the fight. The Stellar Dawn was the last command ship of the Zephyrian Confederation. 3 months ago, they had 50 ships. Now, they had 5. The Vorthan Empire had broken their peace treaty and attacked without warning. System after system fell to their enemy. Millions of her people were dead or captured. Captain, we're getting reports from the outer colonies, said Lieutenant Alex Carter from his communications station. His voice was tired and scared. The Vorthons have taken the mining stations at Kepler 7. They're moving toward our last defense base. Kira closed her eyes. She had fought in 3 wars, but never had she seen destruction like this. The Vorthans were not just winning, were crushing everything in their path. Their weapons were stronger, their ships were faster, and they had 10 times more soldiers. How many civilians did we evacuate from Kepler 7? She asked. Only half, Captain? The transport ships couldn't carry everyone. Kira felt sick. She had failed her people. As a captain, as a leader, as someone sworn to protect the innocent. The Confederation Council was gone. The president was missing. The military high command was destroyed. She was one of the few officers left with any authority. Ma'am, incoming message from Admiral Stone's ship, Carter said. Worked the controls. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen. His uniform was torn and bloody. Behind him, Kira could see fires burning on his bridge. Kira, we can't hold them much longer, Stone said. My ship is badly damaged. We have maybe 6 hours before the Vorthons break through our lines. After that, there's nothing stopping them from reaching the core worlds. What are our options? Kira asked, though she already knew the answer. Surrender or die fighting. Those are the only choices left. The connection ended when Stone's ship exploded. Kira watched the flash of light on her tactical screen. Another friend gone. Another ship lost. Captain, we need to evacuate, said her first officer, Commander Jake Ross. We can take the civilians and run to the outer rim, maybe find somewhere to hide. And then what? Live as refugees while the Vorthans hunt us down one by one. Kira shook her head. No, there has to be another way. She walked to the communications. A station where Carter was working. Old books and data files were spread across his desk. For weeks, he had been studying ancient protocols, looking for some way to call for help. Tell me about this signal again, she said. Carter picked up a data pad. 300 years ago, our scouts found ruins on a dead planet. Inside, they discovered communication equipment from a species called the Builders. Most of it was broken, but we managed to copy some of their transmission methods. And you think this could reach other species? Maybe the Builders were more advanced than us. Their signals could travel across the galaxy in days instead of years. But Captain, we've never tested it. We don't even know if anyone will receive it. Kira looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed Vorthan ships moving closer to their position. In a few hours, they would be in weapons range. After that, the Stellar Dawn would join the growing list of destroyed Confederation vessels. What about that primitive species we found? Last year, the ones from Sol 3? Carter searched through his files. You mean the humans? Captain, they're barely past nuclear technology. They've never even left their own star system. What could they possibly do to help us? Maybe nothing. They're the only ones close enough to reach us in time. Kira made her decision. Send them a message. Tell them we need their help. What exactly should I say? Kira thought carefully. The humans seemed to be a young species, probably not ready for contact with advanced civilizations, but they were. Also, the only hope left. Tell them we're facing a powerful enemy. Ask for any aid they can provide. Medical supplies, food, maybe a few ships, if they have any that can travel between stars. Carter began working on the message. The translation software was old and damaged, but it was the best they had. He typed in their request for humanitarian aid and medical assistance. Unknown to Carter, the software was corrupted. It had been damaged in the last battle when a Vorthon energy beam hit their communications array, Words were being changed. Medical aid became military assistance. Humanitarian supplies became armed support. We request help became we request your military alliance. Message ready, Captain? Should I send it? Kira looked around her bridge one last time. Her crew was young and scared, but they still trusted her to make the right choice. Outside, space was filled with the wreckage of Confederation ships. The stellar dawn might join them. Send it. The signal traveled through space using the ancient builder technology to cross vast distances. It moved faster than any normal transmission, jumping from relay to relay across the galaxy. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Admiral Lisa Hayes was drinking her morning coffee when the alert came through. The message appeared. On her screen, translated into English by the military's best computers. Emergency transmission from unknown source, the computer announced. Message reads, Primitive species of Sol 3, we require your military assistance against the Vorthan. Threat. Our forces are overwhelmed. We formally request military alliance. Coordinates attached. Admiral Hayes nearly dropped her coffee. She read the message 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. An alien species was asking Earth for military help. They were under attack and needed immediate assistance. She reached for the red phone on her desk. This call would wake up the President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and every major military commander on Earth. This is Admiral Hayes. We have a Code 1 first contact situation. An alien species is requesting military alliance against a hostile enemy, I repeat. We are being asked to join an interstellar war. Within minutes, the Pentagon was buzzing with activity. Military leaders who had spent their careers planning for conflicts on Earth suddenly found themselves preparing for humanity's first war among the stars. President Jake Morrison authorized immediate mobilization. Every available ship, soldier, and weapon would be sent to help their new alien allies. Operation Starfall began within hours. Captain Voss waited anxiously for any response to her distress call. She hoped the humans might send a medical ship, or 2, maybe some supplies. She had no idea that Earth was preparing to send the largest military force in human history. The misunderstanding that would change the galaxy forever had begun. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Kira Voss sent her desperate message to the humans. 3 weeks of running, hiding, and watching her people die. The Vorthan Empire had crushed the last Confederation defense forces. Only scattered survivors remained hiding in the ruins of what used to be their civilization. The stellar dawn drifted near the broken remains of Kepler Station. Once, this had been a busy trading post with millions of people. Now it was just twisted metal and debris, floating in space. Kira and her crew had found a few thousand survivors hiding in the station's lower levels. Any word from the humans? Kira asked Lieutenant Alex Carter for the 100th time that day. Carter shook his head. Nothing, Captain. Maybe they didn't get our message. Or maybe they decided we're not worth helping. Kira tried not to show her disappointment. She had hoped that the humans might send a few medical ships, maybe some food and supplies for the refugees. But as the days passed, it seemed more likely that Earth had ignored their plea for help. Captain, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors, said Ensign Betty Clark from her position at the science station. She was young, barely out of the academy, but she was one of the few trained sensor operators they had left. What kind of strange? Kira asked. Energy signatures? Approaching the system, big ones. But they're not Vorthon. The power readings are ... different. Kira moved to Clark's station and looked at the display. She had been reading sensor data for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The energy patterns were completely unknown. How many ships? She asked. Clark worked at her controls, trying to get a clearer reading. I can't tell, Captain. The signatures are too big. It's like there's a wall of energy moving toward us. Could it be a natural phenomenon? A solar storm? Or cosmic event? No, ma'am. These are definitely artificial. Ships, or stations, of some kind, and they're moving fast. Carter suddenly looked up from his communications panel. His face was pale with shock. Captain, I'm getting readings from our automated sensor beacons. The ones we placed at the edge of the system.
What?
Do they show? 300 contacts? No, wait. 500. The number keeps growing. Kira felt her heart skip a beat. 500 ships was more than the entire Confederation fleet at its peak. It was more than the Vorthon invasion force. No species in known space had that many. Vessels. Are they Vorthon reinforcements? No, ma'am. The power signatures are completely different. These ships use technology I've never seen before. On the main screen, space began to change. First, there were tiny flashes of light in the distance. Then the flashes grew bigger and brighter. Something massive was coming out of hyperspace near. The outer planets of the system. My God, whispered Commander Jake Ross. Look at the size of those things. The human fleet emerged from jump space like a steel storm. Massive battleships longer than city blocks appeared first, their hulls bristling with weapons. Then came aircraft carriers so large they could launch hundreds of fighters. Destroyers, cruisers, and support ships followed, spreading across space in perfect formation. Carter's hands shook as he tried to count the ships on his sensors. 847 contacts confirmed, Captain. No, 853 more are still arriving. The bridge of the Stellar Dawn fell silent. Kira and her crew stared at the display showing more warships than they had ever imagined could exist. Each human vessel was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Confederation fleet. Captain, we're being hailed, Carter said quietly. On screen, the face of Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared on their main display. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. Behind her, Kira could see the bridge of what was obviously a command ship. Human officers worked at stations covered with advanced displays and controls. This is Admiral Lisa Hayes of the Terra Defense Fleet, responding to your military alliance request, the human said. We've brought the cavalry. Kira stared at the screen, unable to speak. Military alliance? She had asked for medical aid, not a military alliance. But looking at the massive fleet now surrounding her ship, she realized there had been some kind of misunderstanding. We. Kira struggled to find words. Admiral Hayes, I am Captain Kira Voss of the Zephyrian Confederation. We are grateful for your response, but I think there may have been some confusion in our message. Admiral Hayes smiled grimly. Captain Voss, if you're worried about us being ready for a fight, don't be. We've analyzed the tactical situation. In this sector, the Vorthon Empire has made a serious mistake picking a fight with our new allies. Admiral, I need to explain. Explanations can wait, Captain. Right now, we need to establish forward operating bases and begin intelligence gathering on enemy positions. My fleet commanders are already working on battle plans. The connection ended as Admiral Hayes turned to give orders to her staff. Kira was left staring at a blank screen, trying to understand what had just happened. Captain Carter said slowly, "What exactly did our message say when we sent it?" "We asked for medical aid and humanitarian supplies." "Why?" Carter was reviewing the transmission logs on his computer. His face grew pale as he read. "Captain, the translation software was damaged. In the last battle, it changed our words." "Changed them how?" "Our request for medical aid became a request for military assistance. Our plea for humanitarian supplies became a request for armed support. And our message asking for help, ... Carter looked up at her with horror in his eyes. It became a formal request for military alliance against the Vorthon Empire. Kira felt the blood drain from her face. "You mean we accidentally asked them to join our war? Yes, ma'am?" And apparently, they said yes. Through the main view screen, they could see human ships moving into position throughout the system. Massive carriers launched swarms of fighters. Battleships took up defensive positions around the refugee camps. Engineering vessels began building what looked like military bases on nearby asteroids. "Captain, I'm receiving tactical data from the human fleet," said Ensign Clark. "They're sharing their sensor information with us. The detail is incredible. They can track individual Vorthon ships from 3 systems away." Commander Ross studied the tactical display. "Look at their firepower ratings. Each of their destroyers carries more weapons than our heaviest battleships used to. And their technology," Carter added. "Their computers are analyzing our language. our culture, our military records. They're learning everything about us in minutes. Captain Ben Parker of the human flagship USS Defiance sent a message to all Confederation survivors in the system. His voice was calm and confident. "Attention, Zephyrian personnel. This is Captain Parker of the Terran Fleet. We understand you've been fighting the Vorthons for several months. We're here to help end this war. Please stand by for medical teams and supply distribution. We'll have aid stations operational within 6 hours." Medical ships began docking with the refugee centers. Human doctors and nurses, wearing advanced medical equipment, started treating wounded Confederation citizens. The humans brought medicines that worked better than anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Supply ships delivered food, water, and equipment. The human rations were strange but nutritious. The clothing was simple but warm. The tools and computers were far more advanced than Confederation technology. "Captain," said a young refugee who had been treated by human medics there, asking about our military situation. "They want to know everything about Vorthan tactics, weapons, and ship positions." Kira realized that the humans were not just providing aid. They were preparing for war. A massive, overwhelming war against the Vorthan Empire. Colonel Danny Murphy, commander of Human Ground Forces, requested a meeting with her. On the screen, he appeared to be a tough, experienced soldier. "Captain Voss, my Marines are ready to begin liberation operations on Vorthan-occupied worlds. We need intelligence. On civilian populations and urban layouts? How many of your people are still trapped on conquered planets?" "Millions," Kira replied. "But Colonel, the Vorthans have overwhelming force. They've never lost a major battle." Murphy's grin was cold and confident. "Ma'am, they've never fought humans before. Trust me, we're very good at liberating occupied territory." As night fell over the refugee camps, Kira stood in her quarters, looking out at the human fleet. Hundreds of ships filled the space around them, their lights twinkling like stars. She had sent a simple request for medical supplies and gotten the most powerful military force she had ever seen. The question now was whether this massive fleet could actually defeat the Vorthan Empire, and what would happen to her people when the fighting was over. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Dex Gornoth stood in the command center of his flagship, the Vorthan Imperial ship Deathbringer. Around him, his officers worked at their stations, coordinating the final stages of the Confederation conquest. In 3 months they had crushed an entire civilization. It had been almost too easy. "Status report," Gornoth demanded.
"Ah, sir."
"We have secured 12 star systems," reported his tactical officer. "Confederation resistance has been eliminated in all sectors. We estimate 90% of their military has been destroyed." Gornoth smiled. The Confederation had been weak, just like all the prey species they had conquered over the centuries. Their technology was outdated, their tactics were predictable, and their leaders lacked the will to fight properly. What about the remaining Confederation ships? Small groups of survivors hiding in the outer systems. "Maybe a dozen ships total. They pose no threat to our operations." "Excellent. Begin Phase 2 of the occupation. I want mining operations established on all captured worlds within the week." Gornoth was already planning his next conquest. Galactic Council had several other species that would make good slaves. The Andorians had valuable technology. Centauri possessed rich mineral deposits. After the Confederation was fully processed, the Vorthan Empire would continue its expansion. "Admiral, we're receiving a strange report from Scout Group 7, said his communications officer. "What kind of report?" "They encountered an unknown vessel in the Kepler system. The ship refused to identify itself and opened fire when challenged." Frowned. "Probably another Confederation survivor." "Did our scouts destroy it?" "No, sir."
Yes.
The strange part: the unknown ship destroyed 3 of our scouts before they could retreat. For the first time in months, Gornoth felt a touch of concern. Confederation ships had never been able to destroy Vorthan vessels in direct combat. Their weapons were too weak, their shields too fragile. "Send me the tactical data from the engagement." The battle report appeared on his main screen. Gornoth studied the sensor readings and weapon signatures. The unknown ship had used projectile weapons instead of energy beams. Its missiles had somehow penetrated Vorthan shields that should have stopped them easily. This technology is unfamiliar, said his science officer. The weapons appear to be primitive kinetic devices, but they're far more effective than they should be. Could it be a new Confederation weapon? Impossible, sir? The Confederation lacks the industrial capacity to develop anything this advanced. Their remaining forces are barely keeping their ships running. Gornoth made a decision. Send the 4th Battle Group to Kepler system. I want this mystery ship captured and studied. If the Confederation has found new allies, we need to know about it. 3 days later, the 4th and 4th Battle Group arrived at the edge of the Kepler system. 12 heavy cruisers and 20 destroyers moved in formation toward the inner planets. Commander Vexthorn, leading the group, expected to find a few refugee ships hiding near the old space station. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts throughout the system, his sensor operator reported. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. That's impossible. Recalibrate your sensors. Sir, sensors are functioning normally. The contacts are real. They're not Confederation designs. Thorne studied his tactical display. The unknown ships were arranged in perfect military formation around the refugee camps. Their energy signatures were massive, indicating vessels far larger than anything in the Confederation fleet. Who are they? Unknown, sir. They're not responding to our hails. Captain Susan Wells of the human destroyer USS Thunderbolt watched the Vorthon ships approach on her main screen. Her vessel was part of the forward patrol line, positioned to intercept any enemy forces that entered the system. Captain, the aliens are trying to communicate, reported her communications officer. They're demanding we identify ourselves and surrender. What's our response? Admiral Hayes has authorized us to engage any hostile forces that threaten the refugee camps. Wells studied the tactical data on the Vorthon ships. They were large and heavily armed, but their weapons appeared to be energy-based. Human intelligence had studied Confederation battle records and knew that Vorthon shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Weapons, target the lead ship. Load armor-piercing rounds. The USS Thunderbolt fired first. Kinetic rounds traveling at incredible speed struck the Vorthon flagship shields. The shields, designed to deflect energy beams, offered little protection against solid projectiles. The rounds punched through and impacted the ship's hull. Commander Thorne watched in shock as his flagship shuddered under the impact. Damage. Report: hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. We've lost primary power to the forward weapons array. How is that possible? Our shields should have stopped those weapons. Sir, the projectiles passed right through our shield matrix. They're using some kind of kinetic bombardment system. The human destroyer fired again. This time, missiles streaked toward the Vorthon formation. The warheads were small nuclear devices designed to disable rather than destroy. They detonated against the Vorthon ship's hulls, sending waves of electromagnetic energy through their systems. We're losing control of secondary systems, reported Thorne's engineering officer. The electromagnetic pulse is disrupting our computer networks. 2 more Vorthon ships took critical damage as human weapons found their targets. The aliens' energy shields were useless against the kinetic attacks, their armor designed to resist. Energy weapons cracked under the impact of high-velocity projectiles. All ships retreat to safe distance, Thorne ordered. Transmit all tactical data to Fleet Command. Priority 1. The surviving Vorthon ships fled the system, but not before sending detailed reports about the encounter to Admiral Gornath. The data showed weapons and tactics completely unlike anything they had faced before. On Earth, General Pete Adams reviewed the battle reports in the Pentagon War Room. The first engagement between human and Vorthon forces had been a complete success, but it also revealed important information about their enemy. The Vorthons have superior energy weapons and strong shields, Adams told the assembled military leaders. But their defenses are designed for the kind of warfare they're used to. They're not prepared for our kinetic weapons. What about their numbers? Asked Admiral Hayes via video link from the fleet. Intelligence estimates they have over 2,000 ships in the occupied systems, but they're spread thin across 12 star systems. If we can concentrate our forces and hit them hard, we can defeat them in detail. Captain Voss sat in the briefing. Room aboard the USS Defiance, listening to human military officers discuss battle plans. The casual confidence of these humans amazed her. They talked about fighting the Vorthan Empire like it was a routine military operation. "Captain Voss, what can you tell us about Vorthan ground forces?" asked Colonel Murphy. "They use energy weapons and powered armor. Their soldiers are larger and stronger than most Confederation species. In ground combat, they usually outnumber defenders 10 to 1. How do they handle urban warfare? They don't fight in cities? They just destroy them from orbit and build new ones." The human officers exchanged glances. Commander Rita Stone, the weapons officer, leaned forward. "They don't have experience with urban combat. No street fighting, no building to building. Operations? No. Why would they? It's easier to destroy and rebuild." Colonel Murphy smiled grimly. "Because, Captain, urban warfare is something humans are very, very good at. If we can force them to fight in cities, we'll have a major advantage." Admiral Gornath received the tactical reports from the Kepler system battle with growing alarm. The unknown ships had weapons and tactics that could defeat Vorthan forces. Even worse, intelligence suggested there were hundreds of these vessels. "Who are these aliens?" he demanded. "Where do they come from?" "Unknown, sir. They don't match." "Any species in our databases?" "Their technology is primitive in some ways, but their weapons are remarkably effective against our defenses." "How many ships do they have?" "Reconnaissance suggests over 800 vessels of various sizes. Some are larger than our heaviest. Battleships." Gornath felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. The Vorthan Empire had conquered dozens of species, but they had never faced an enemy with this kind of military strength. "What do we know about their home system?" "They appear to come from a system called Sol. It's located in what we thought was an uninhabited sector. Send probe ships to this Sol system. I want to know everything about these aliens. Their technology, their industrial capacity, their population." "Sir, should we continue the occupation of Confederation worlds?" Gornath considered the question. A smart move would be to consolidate their forces and prepare for a defensive war. But the Vorthan Empire had never retreated from a conquest. To do so now would show weakness to the other species watching this conflict. Continue the occupation, but move the second and third fleets to defensive positions. If these unknown aliens want a war, we'll give them one. The first battle between humans and Vorthans was over, but both sides knew it was just the beginning. The Vorthan Empire had found an enemy that could actually hurt them. The human fleet had found an opponent worthy of their strength. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood before the holographic display in the USS Defiance's command center. The three-dimensional map showed 12 star systems, all controlled by the Vorthan Empire. Red dots marked enemy positions, while blue dots showed human fleet elements moving into attack formation. Operation Hammerfall begins in 6 hours, Hayes announced to her assembled fleet commanders. "We're going to hit 3 systems simultaneously. The goal is to liberate as many Confederation worlds as possible while keeping the Vorthans from concentrating their forces." Captain Ben Parker studied the tactical display. "Admiral Intelligence shows the Vorthans have over 2,000 ships, spread across their occupied territory. Even with our advantages, those are tough odds. That's why we're not fighting them all at once," Hayes replied. "We're going to use speed and coordination to defeat them piece by piece. Captain Lewis, what's the status of your carrier group?" Captain Tony Lewis of the USS Intrepid looked up from his datapad. "All fighter squadrons are ready, Admiral. We've got 400 birds loaded and ready to launch." Squadron Commander Davis has been training her pilots on the Vorthan ship designs. "Good, Colonel Murphy. How are your Marines?" Colonel Danny Murphy's weathered face showed a grim smile. "My boys are ready to kick some alien ass, Admiral. We've studied the Vorthan. Occupation methods. You're going to be in for a surprise when they try to fight us in the cities." Captain Kira Voss, serving as the human fleet's cultural advisor, pointed to several worlds on the display. "These planets have the largest civilian populations. If we can liberate them quickly, we'll save millions of lives." Hayes nodded. "Though, are our primary targets? Remember, people, we're not just fighting a war here, we're saving an entire civilization." The first wave of the human counteroffensive began at dawn, ship time. 3 separate battle groups jumped into hyperspace, each targeting a different Vorthan-controlled system. The element of surprise was total in the Altair system. Captain Susan Wells led a destroyer squadron against the Vorthan orbital defense platforms. The enemy had never faced human tactics before. Instead of engaging in the long-range energy weapon duels they were used to, the human ships closed to point-blank range and unleashed devastating kinetic bombardments. The Vorthan defense. Platforms designed to fight other Vorthan ships couldn't handle the human assault. Their shields were useless against solid projectiles. Their weapons couldn't track targets moving at such high speeds. In 30 minutes, the entire orbital defense network was destroyed. Altair system is clear, Wells reported to Admiral Hayes. Beginning landing operations. On the surface of Altair Prime, the Vorthan ground forces prepared for what they thought would be a traditional orbital bombardment followed by occupation. Instead, human dropships landed in the middle of their cities, and Marines began street by street. Fighting Major Kate Johnson led her Special Forces team through the ruins of what had been Altair Prime's capital city. The Vorthons had built their command center in the middle of the urban area, expecting that any attacker would simply destroy the entire city from space. They hadn't counted on humans who specialized in urban warfare. Squad 2, take the building. On the right, Squad 3, cover the intersection. We're going to clear this block building by building. Johnson ordered over her radio. The Vorthons found themselves fighting an enemy that used tactics they had never seen. Human soldiers appeared in windows, fired from rooftops, and attacked through underground tunnels. The aliens' heavy weapons were designed for open battlefield combat, not close-quarters fighting in narrow streets. "This is insane," reported the Vorthan ground commander to his ship. "Humans are fighting inside the city. They're using the buildings as cover. Our weapons are too powerful for this environment." "Then destroy the buildings," came the reply from orbit. "Sir, if we destroy the buildings, we'll kill our own troops along with the humans." Colonel Murphy's Marines had studied every urban warfare technique developed by human military forces over the centuries. They used smoke grenades to confuse Vorthan sensors. They set traps in buildings that collapsed when enemy forces entered. They coordinated with local civilians who knew every street and alley. Within hours, the Vorthan ground forces were trapped in scattered pockets throughout the city. They had superior firepower, but they couldn't use it effectively in the urban environment. In space, Captain Lewis launched his fighters against the Vorthan fleet, trying to support their ground forces. Squadron Commander Amy Davis led the attack, her pilots using tactics adapted from Earth's atmospheric combat. "Remember, these alien ships have strong shields at the front and sides, but weaker coverage at the rear," Davis told her squadron over the radio. "We're going to attack from multiple angles, just like we practiced." The human fighters moved in coordinated groups, attacking the Vorthan ships from different directions simultaneously. The aliens tried to use their energy weapons to create defensive barriers, but the human pilots were too fast and too skilled. "I've got a clean shot on the big one," reported Lieutenant Bill Carter, Amy's wingman. "Take it, Bill. All squadrons, focus fire on the command ship." The Vorthon flagship took hits from 6 different directions. Shields designed to protect against energy weapons failed under the kinetic assault. Missiles penetrated the hull and detonated inside the ship, causing massive internal damage. Similar battles were happening in 2 other star systems. The human battle plan was working perfectly. By attacking multiple targets simultaneously, they prevented the Vorthans from concentrating their forces. On the USS Defiance, Captain Voss watched the tactical displays with amazement. "They're winning," she said to Commander Stone. "The humans are actually defeating the Vorthan Empire." "Did you doubt it?" Stone asked with a smile. "I hoped, but I didn't dare believe. My people have been fighting the Vorthans for centuries. We've never won a major battle against them. You've been fighting them the wrong way," Stone explained. "You tried to match their strengths, or exploiting their weaknesses." In the Vorthan Command Center, Admiral Gornoth watched his forces being defeated across 3 star systems. The reports coming in were all the same. His ships were being destroyed, his ground forces were trapped, and his defensive positions were falling. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These humans have primitive technology. Their ships are smaller. than ours, sir. Their tactics are completely different from anything we've faced, reported his tactical officer. They don't fight the way we expect. They use speed instead of strength, coordination instead of firepower. What are our casualties? We've lost 63 ships and over 200,000 ground troops in the last 8 hours. Gornoth felt, his confidence cracking. The Vorthan Empire had never lost so many forces so quickly. The humans were not just defeating his forces, they were destroying them. Pull back our remaining ships to defensive positions. We need to regroup and develop new tactics. But Admiral Hayes wasn't giving the Vorthons time to regroup. As soon as the first 3 systems were secure, she launched attacks on 3 more. The human industrial capacity, fed by Earth's massive war production, could replace losses faster than the Vorthans could inflict them. Commander Roy Hayes, the fleet's intelligence officer, briefed the admiral on enemy capabilities. The Vorthons are trying to adapt to our tactics, but they're having trouble. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower and frontal assaults. Our mobile tactics are completely outside their experience. What about their reserves? They're moving ships from their home systems to reinforce the occupied territories, but that's going to take time, and we're not giving them any breathing room. On the liberated worlds, human medical teams worked alongside Confederation doctors to treat the wounded. The aliens were amazed by human medical technology. Injuries that would have been fatal were healed in hours. Captain Voss visited one of the refugee camps that had been established for liberated civilians. A young Zephyrian girl ran up to her, carrying a small toy that one of the human soldiers had given her. "Captain, are the humans going to stay and protect us?" the girl asked. Voss knelt down to the child's level. "I don't know, little one, but I think they're going to make sure the bad aliens can't hurt us anymore." As the weeks passed, the human offensive continued. System after system fell to the advancing fleet.
Vorthons who?
The Vorthon home system had never seen war before. For over 1,000 years, it had been the center of an empire that conquered other worlds but never faced attack on its own territory. Now, the massive human fleet approached the outer planets. Like a steel storm, Admiral Dex Gornoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human armada deploy for the final battle. 800 human ships faced the last. 200 vessels of the Vorthan Imperial Fleet. The numbers told the story of 6 months of devastating defeats. "Sir, the humans are requesting our surrender," reported his communications officer. "Put them on screen." Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared on the main display. Behind her, Gornoth could see the bridge of the human flagship, filled with officers working at advanced control stations. "Admiral Gornoth, this is Admiral Hayes of the Terra Defense Fleet. Your empire is defeated. Your occupied territories have been liberated. Your fleet is outnumbered 4-1. I'm offering you the chance to surrender and save the lives of your remaining personnel." Gornoth looked around his bridge at the officers who had served him faithfully throughout the war. They were good soldiers, but they were also realists. They knew the war was lost. "What are your terms?" Gornoth asked. "Conditional surrender. All Vorthon military forces will lay down their weapons. Your empire will withdraw from all occupied territories and pay reparations to the species you conquered. Your military will be supervised by human forces for the next 50 years. And if I refuse," Hayes' expression was cold and determined, "and we'll destroy your remaining ships and occupy your home worlds by force. The choice is yours, Admiral." Closed his eyes. The Vorthan Empire had lasted for over a millennium. It had conquered dozens of species and ruled hundreds of worlds. Now it was ending because they had attacked the wrong enemy. "I accept your terms," he said quietly. The surrender ceremony took place aboard the USS Defiance. Admiral Gornoth, wearing knee, his dress uniform, signed the surrender documents, while human and Zephyrian representatives watched. The war that had begun with a translation error was finally over. Captain Kira Voss stood beside Admiral Hayes during the ceremony. She still couldn't believe what had happened over the past 6 months. Her desperate plea for medical aid had brought the most powerful military force in the galaxy to her people's rescue. "Admiral Hayes," Voss said after the ceremony was over, There's something I need to tell you. Something about the message we sent to Earth. What about it, Captain? Voss took a deep breath. We didn't mean to ask for military assistance. Our translation software was damaged in a battle. We were trying to request medical aid and humanitarian supplies. Hayes stared at her for a long moment. You mean to tell me that this entire war started because of a translation error? Yes, ma'am. We never intended to ask Earth to join our war. We just needed medicine and food for our refugees. Admiral Hayes was quiet for several minutes, thinking about the implications of what Voss had just told her. 12,000 human military personnel had died in the war. 34,000 more had been wounded. Hundreds of ships had been damaged or destroyed, all because of a mistranslation. Captain Voss, Hayes finally said, "If this is what happens when you ask for a few bandages and some food, remind me never to see what happens if you actually declare war on someone." The human fleet established permanent bases throughout the former Vorthan territory. Officially, they were there to maintain stability and prevent future conflicts. In reality, Earth's military had discovered a new frontier and had no intention of leaving. President Jake Morrison addressed the American people from the White House. 6 months ago, we received a call for help from a species we had never met. We answered that call and helped liberate an entire civilization from tyranny. Today, humanity takes its place among the stars as a force for peace and freedom throughout the galaxy. The speech was broadcast to every human settlement and ship. It was also translated into dozens of alien languages and transmitted across known space. The message was clear. Earth was now a galactic power. They would protect their allies. General Pete Adams met with congressional leaders to discuss the long-term implications of the war. "We've established military bases in 12 star systems," he reported. "Our industrial capacity has expanded to support interstellar operations. We have defense treaties with the Zephyrian Confederation and 3 other species that were liberated from Vorthon control." "What about the costs?" asked a senator. "The war was expensive, but the benefits are enormous. We've gained access to advanced alien technologies, new trading partners, and strategic positions throughout this sector of the galaxy. Earth is no longer an isolated world. We're part of a larger community." Captain Ben Parker of the USS Defiance was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Galactic Defense Force. His mission was to patrol the liberated territories and prevent other aggressive species from filling the void left by the Vorthan Empire. "The galaxy is watching us," Parker told his officers. "How we handle victory will determine whether we're seen as liberators or conquerors. We need to prove that humanity can be trusted with this kind of power," Colonel Danny Murphy established. The first human military academy on an alien world. Young humans and aliens would train together, learning the tactics that had defeated the Vorthan Empire. The school would become a symbol of cooperation between species. "We're not just teaching them how to fight," Murphy explained to visiting officials. "We're teaching them how to win." There's a difference. Squadron Commander Amy Davis was assigned to train alien pilots in human fighter tactics. Many species had never used small, fast-attack craft the way humans did. The training programs would spread human military doctrine throughout the galaxy. Captain Susan Wells received command of the new Deep Space Exploration Fleet. Her mission was to map unknown sectors and make contact with other species. Influence was expanding rapidly beyond the former Vorthan territory, the Zephyrian Confederation rebuilt under human protection. Captain Voss was promoted to admiral and served as the liaison between her people and the human military. The alliance that had begun with a translation error became the foundation for a new galactic order. "We lost our independence when the Vorthons conquered us," Voss reflected during a ceremony honoring the war dead. "The humans gave it back to us. But more than that, they gave us hope for the future." The former Vorthon worlds were placed under human administration while new governments were established. The process was slow and sometimes difficult, but it was carried out with the same efficiency that had characterized the human military campaign on Earth. The war had transformed human society. The planet's industrial capacity had expanded too. Support interstellar operations. Universities established new programs to study alien cultures and technologies. The space program once focused on exploring the solar system, now planned missions to distant galaxies. Children grew up learning about alien species and galactic history, alongside traditional subjects. The idea of humanity as an isolated species was replaced by the reality of Earth as a galactic power. Dr. Sarah Wilson. Earth's first xenobiologists studied the medical techniques that human doctors had learned from treating alien patients. "We've gained 50 years of medical advancement in 6 months," she reported. "The knowledge we've acquired will benefit humanity for generations." Engineer Robert Chen led the team responsible for adapting alien technologies for human use. "Computer systems are more advanced than ours in some ways," he explained. "But our manufacturing techniques are more efficient. By combining both approaches, we can create better technology than either species could develop alone." The translation error that had started the war became a source of both humor and caution throughout the galaxy. Diplomatic protocols were established to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. Every important message between species was checked and double-checked by multiple translation systems. But the real legacy of the war was the transformation it had brought to galactic politics. The Vorthan Empire, which had dominated this sector of space for centuries, was gone. In its place, a new alliance led by humanity was establishing peace and prosperity among dozens of species. Captain Voss, now serving as the Zephyrian ambassador to Earth, often reflected on the decision she had made 6 months earlier. In trying to save her people with a simple distress call, she had accidentally summoned the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. The result had been the liberation of her civilization, the defeat of a tyrannical empire, and the emergence of humanity as a galactic superpower, all because a damaged computer had changed medical aid into military alliance. As she stood in her office overlooking the United Nations building in New York, Voss smiled at the irony. Sometimes the best way to ask for help was to accidentally ask for war. And sometimes, the universe provided exactly what you needed, even when you didn't know you needed it. The age of human galactic expansion had begun, not through conquest or colonization, but through a translation error that had brought Earth's war fleet to rescue a desperate ally. The galaxy would never be the same again.